And as promised, today on Brookline Interactive Group, we've got newly elected and tested through the fire moderator, Kate Poverman. As many of you remember, she was on the show just before the election on Tuesday, May 4th, talking about her vision and the way she wanted to be moderator, and the voters liked what they heard and elected her on Tuesday, May 4th. So Kate, thanks for being on the show.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I know you're used to Zoom at this point because you ran, Brookline's longest town meeting in recorded history, and it was recorded. It was on Zoom. But before we get there, I want to sort of talk through, right? You got elected Tuesday, May 4th, found out the results watching Brookline Interactive Group a little late at night on Tuesday, May 4th. And then on the 5th, you got sworn in, right? May 5th.
It probably was the 5th. I don't remember. Yeah. I had to travel to Joan Goldberg, but the chaos started before whenever I was sworn in. It was immediate, like sort of panic mode, like, oh my God, how is all of this going to get done? It's just a structural flaw to have an election 14 days before a complex town meeting starts. I don't know how you solve that, but it's crazy. It's not a job you can learn in 2 weeks. It is required quite the push.
Well, and it's interesting because, in fact, if there's two candidates for town meeting, and the person for moderator, and the person who's not elected then sort of has to pivot back into their position as a town meeting member. One could imagine swapping town meeting and the election, right? Yeah. So that the moderator in March, in April, right, as we're building up to town meeting, is the moderator through that town meeting. And then a nice time to switch moderators is after town meeting finishes. But that's not what we did. And so you had like 2 weeks to get into it and get us ready. So walk us through, we have town meeting members who watch the show, and we have non-town meeting members who watch the show. So walk us through some of those challenges in those 2 weeks between May 5th, when you were elected, and that first night of town meeting at 7 o'clock.
Sure. Well, Sandy Gadsby, the former moderator, was just invaluable in helping me through the process, which, as I said, is pretty overwhelming. So, as some of your audience knows, what goes on at town meeting is that warrant articles are put forth. So, suggested changes in bylaws and things like that. We had 40 for this upcoming town meeting. Now, it's when even though people have notice of what the issue may be. So, for example, creating a local historic district, because there'll be little blurbs coming out describing the warrant articles. It's not till the combined reports come out that you get all of the details, all of the nuances and everything. So what I found really funny is Sandy said, the guy in the printing department's going to become your best friend. You got to call him up, and as soon as the combined reports are ready, you go get them. So that's exactly what happened. And then you have to comb through the combined reports. Now, the combination is the article that, say, the select board or a citizen or somebody else has put forward. And then combined with that are the views being given by the advisory committee, by the select board if they haven't put forth the article, by various other committees. And so you have 600 plus pages to get through for these 40 articles. And it's not just a question of saying, okay, here's the article. It's easy. This is where the motion is, because by the time you've gotten it, often people have filed alternative motions. It's like, okay, I didn't like exactly what this one said. So the advisory committee will have a substitute motion, say, do this one instead. The select board sometimes does it itself. So you may have various competing motions in addition to having to look at the actual original motion. You have to assess the other ones and figure out, well, which is the main motion? Has the one that was originally filed been substituted by the select board motion? And it sounds easy, but it is so complex. It is such detailed work that I haven't worked that hard since cramming for exams in law school. I was drinking, 3 cups of coffee a day, not taking lunch, just taking power bars. It was very, very intense.
And it's not just the motions, it's also organizing all the people, right?
Oh, yes, yes. That is something, it's a constantly changing cast. So people sign up to speak, and usually you put them in order of how they come in, and alternate between pro and con on the views. The people who are putting forward the motion talk first. But we're getting 200 emails a day as we're getting into the beginning of town meeting, literally 200 a day. And I don't know, I'm exaggerating. Half of these are like, oh, wait, I want to talk. Oh, wait, I don't want to talk. Oh, wait, I want to change my side. So you're creating these lists and you're recreating them and recreating them. And at some point you got to say, that's it. It's over. We have our list. If you want to speak, then you've got to raise your chat hand on the Zoom function, because so much of a successful town meeting is preparation, as is the case for so many other things. You can't prepare for everything. And there were things I always forgot to do, like certain procedural things. Fortunately, I had the team in back of me saying, do this. So it's not easy as a first-time moderator to keep everything in mind. You're juggling a lot.
And in the fall 2020 town meeting, of course, you were a town meeting member, and so you were a participant in the town meeting.
Yes.
Tell us about the getting ready for, the managing the town meeting from the front of the room, proverbially, rather than from the audience.
There is no comparison. I mean, if you do your homework as a town meeting member, you are spending hours preparing for town meeting. And then you wait. I used to wait to see what the various arguments were, to see how I would make up my mind, how I would vote. From the point of the moderator, you're orchestrating a dance. You have no stake in the game because you abstain. You're neutral. You don't take any position on any issue, and you want to make sure that both sides have a chance to talk. And sometimes there's game playing. There's strategic movements. For example, there's something called calling the question. Somebody or a lot of people say, okay, we've talked about this enough. I'm going to move to call the question. And what that means is town meeting then has to vote. Do we call off the debate? Have we heard enough? Are we sick of this or not? And town meeting has to vote on whether or not to call the question. Sometimes it can be put in as like, okay, we don't like the way this argument is going. Let's call the question. So somebody will raise their hand to do that, or to disrupt the flow. One item at town meeting, there were 4 times when the question was called, because you have to have a 2/3 vote, and the town meeting member said, no, we haven't heard enough, haven't heard enough, haven't heard enough. And then finally they said, okay, we've heard enough. And they voted. I've never seen anything like that before. And whether it was just people wanting more information or people calling the question too early, combination of both. There were some really complicated issues. For example, the how to handle Airbnbs, what sort of rules the town was going to impose. Very complicated rules involving finance, zoning, personal people's lives, how they are using Airbnbs to supplement income. Just a lot to discuss and a lot to understand. So as moderator, you want to make sure the issues are aired as fairly and fully as possible. So sometimes people would say, I want to call the question, and I would just say, nope, nope, moving on, nope. So that's one of the judgment calls you have to make.
Now, no town meeting goes without a hitch, and on Zoom, it's even more complex. And of course, the more nights of town meeting, the more chances for things to kind of not go the way you had planned. And maybe give us a few examples of things where, things didn't play out the way you had expected, whether or not it was because of a human error or physical error, or just, wow, that was really surprising. Give us some of the surprises.
Well, one was when we were, the people hosting it were in the high school auditorium, and a student decided to pull a fire alarm. So we had just convened the meeting. Everyone had to evacuate. Nobody knew what was going on, if the fire engines are coming. And so after about half an hour, it was determined it was just a kid pulling a prank. We went back in and resumed town meeting. But that was an unusual.
And so even though most of us were, at our own homes, not affected by the fire alarm,
Yes.
we still had to pause for a fire alarm because like you and Ben Kaufman and Ben Franco and the IT staff, and how many people are how many people were in the auditorium?
Well, actually, there are about 8, because we have the people who do the thankless job of the young women of letting people into the meeting. They're getting the calls from people saying, I can't connect, or, get me in. So there are 3 of them. There's somebody doing lights. There are the cameraman, the IT person who does a lot of the slides, Ben Franco, me, Sandy Gadsby was there. So about 10 people. I think the most difficult thing about the Zoom for me is that if I made a joke, I couldn't tell if people were laughing. I'm just sort of hoping that they were, because I make bad jokes, so it's quite possible.
I want to go ahead and say the most difficult thing for you was forgetting you had a hot mic.
Apparently, I did.
So would, just so viewers know, the moderator, of course, is running things, and there's a lot of words coming sort of from the moderator, or then to someone else, and then back to the moderator. And the moderator would explain the coming vote, and then we'd go to the vote. And we'd have, 40 seconds or some amount of time to cast our vote, and the vote would be on the screen. So we couldn't see the moderator, but we could hear the moderator.
Which the moderator kept forgetting, and sometimes, one of the guys on stage would, make a joke and I'd laugh or I'd make some comment. And I'm not sure I ever really got through a town meeting without saying something on the hot mic.
Well, fortunately, it was all good things. So that was one sort of surprise was the fire alarm. Any others?
Well, sort of procedurally, there was this very complex article about a local historic district. And it was a surprise because the discussion took 3 days overall. There was a very long discussion one day, a vote, 1 vote difference in yes or no. Then there was a procedural motion, somebody saying, well, I really didn't understand what was going on. I want to have town meeting reconsider that vote. So there was a controversy over that. The vote was taken. It was decided to reconsider. Arguments, talk, 1 vote again, exactly the same. So that's a very unusual situation. It only is exciting for somebody like wonks, like you and me, or like, oh my God, can you believe that? But in terms of other surprises, I think it went really quite well, all things considered.
The 2 that I can remember, one was part of Brookline lost power.
Oh, yes.
And so the town meeting members from that part of Brookline had a different experience.
Yes.
Your laptop might work, but if your internet doesn't, that's not so great. And then maybe tell us about that. And then the other one I remember was we ran out of votes.
Oh my God, yes.
Tell us about that.
Oh, that was, I'm sorry, again, a procedural wonk, but yes, real drama. So yeah, one of the precincts lost their power. So Ben Franco, our chat monitor, kept getting messages, precinct 14's out, precinct 14's out, all these people can't connect there. And so the issue is, do you go forward or not? Do you pause and wait till these people can rejoin? We still had a quorum, a mass of people who had to be there. So we elected to proceed. If there were an instance where, say, 40 people were kicked out, it might make sense to pause to make sure that every town meeting member fully had a chance to participate. So that was a glitch. And one of the things that happened is that people called the town clerk the next day and said, I didn't have a chance to vote. This is how I would have voted. And there are very limited circumstances in which you can enter a vote after the session is over. So Ben Kaufman, the clerk, would be very careful, check with me about decisions as to whether or not allowing the vote made sense. And I think it went pretty smoothly. One thing that did not work was when somebody that night said, I lost my power, and then 10 days later said, oh yeah, here's how I want to vote. Like, nope, that's not going to work. So Zoom did create some constraints. You can only, don't ask me why, but you can only have 25 recorded votes on Zoom. A recorded vote is obviously, keeping track of and recording a particular way, who votes what. Every
And for people who
time,
use Zoom, that's just like when you're on a regular Zoom that's not town meeting and there's a poll and they say, what do you think about the Red Sox? They're awesome. They're great. They're the best.
Right.
And you click one, right? That's what we used for voting. And we can only have 25.
right. And the problem is that votes on calling the question, i.e. should we continue, counted as votes. So before the evening was over, or right at the end of the evening, we had 2 articles left. The tech guy came up and said, we will not have enough votes to finish because we had 3. So the first article, then the second article, and then you had to vote to adjourn. And I guess we only had 2. And it's like, if we weren't able to vote to adjourn, we would be there forever, so we just ran out of votes. So as a result, we had to have a whole other night of meetings. And so when I cautioned people in an email, like, you might want to think twice about those, calling the questions, I got a little bit of, not backlash, but some people weren't. I was half joking, but still, it didn't have to happen. So, but yeah, that was not expected at all.
So I want to transition a little bit from the recent past to the future, and we'll start with that conversation about June 15th. And so, of course, yesterday was June 15th, and at 12:01 a.m. yesterday morning, the state of emergency expired, and that meant the emergency legislation that allowed for representative town meetings like Brookline's to occur on Zoom also expired.
Yes.
And so tell us how that impacted conversations about town meeting starting in early June, and then transition to what December 15th looks like for us.
Well, funny you should mention that. So we had this June 15th deadline, do or die, we have to finish, 11:59 p.m. on June 4th. It used to be the town meeting would take 4 sessions. Well, after 4 sessions, we had done maybe a quarter of the articles. So things were looking bad. If we continued on that route, we were not going to finish town meeting by the drop dead date, and everything we would have done would be null unless it was retroactively approved by the governor and the legislature. So I said, okay, we are meeting every day, every weekday between now and the 14th of June, because we are getting this done. And amazingly, that picked up the pace when people knew that they were going to have to change a lot of plans in order to be with the town meeting schedule. And it surprised some people, including one of our representatives, that he was called on. I love as he said, well, I wasn't prepared for the blistering pace at which town meeting would be going, which was, it surprised us all, but that was hilarious. So the extension has come in. We always start fall town meeting the week before Thanksgiving, usually a couple of days then, a couple of days the week after Thanksgiving, and then you're done. Well, there are no guarantees based on the way town meeting has been going that we will actually be done. It sounds like a lot of time, but it's not, before December 15th, when it expires again. So if we weren't finished, let's say we have so many articles again, it's taking us forever to get through. It would be a disaster to let that happen again. And so I wrote people saying, okay, we're meeting every single weekday, week before Thanksgiving, the 2 weeks after, plan accordingly. We are not going to bump up against that deadline. With the June deadline, I spent a whole day talking with legislators like you, Senator Cindy Cream, Mike Moran. We're scrambling, like, how can you help us? We will be in big trouble if we don't make it. And you guys were wonderful. And then eventually, legislator, it plods along, and they said, we can't promise anything. You said can't promise anything. And thank God we finished when we did. I was very happy. We would have finished, but it was very nice to have a little breathing room. And it's not going to happen in December or the fall town meeting. I'm going to keep them at a fast clip.
Blistering pace, if you will.
I know, exactly.
Well, this interview has only got 4 more minutes. We don't do 3 nights on a single interview. We stick to just the one. And I will say that we've now had town meeting virtually for a few in a row, but certainly this one was the most challenging content. Right, new moderator, a lot of new town meeting members.
Yep.
Power outage, fire alarm.
Yep.
Right. Eminent legislation, lots of moving pieces. And I think you did an outstanding job, and I know that you'll keep getting better at it. And I was delighted. Any last thoughts? Here's one for you. Give us a suggestion for how town meeting members as a body can help make the process better. What can we, the town meeting members, do to make for a better town meeting?
Okay. In terms of quicker, facetiously, I really felt like getting up one night and saying, you want things to go faster? Don't talk so much, because Brookline people like to talk. I think that the more people who prepare really well for town meeting and have a great grasp of the issues, that's going to make things go faster. Making sure that the presentations are on point. And that, frankly, the moderator explains very clearly, okay, this is what we're voting on. And someone suggested this is what will happen if it's a yes. This is what will happen if it's a no. So that might be a change I'd make to make it easier for town meeting members to really understand what they're voting on. In town meeting itself, there's always room for improvement. When you got 250 people, most of whom have very strong opinions, there's always going to be something going on.
Well, I think that's right. And I think the hard part is we tell people don't repeat. But if people prepare comments, it can be very difficult to snip out parts of what you were going to say on the fly, right? And so we want people to prepare. Very few people can speak well extemporaneously for 3 minutes at a time. We want them to, but if they prepare and they're not the very first speaker, they might be repeating themselves. So it is a challenge. And I think we should acknowledge that it's a challenge. And I hope we will not be too patient that we go past our deadline of December 15th, but continue to be patient with each other because this form of democracy, it gets a lot of input, it gets a lot of participation, but that means more room for folks to either be our best selves or not. And I hope we will continue to strive to be our best selves. But really, I think it was a great job. I think town meeting did a great job. Sure, we took a long time. I don't see that necessarily as a bad thing. And yeah, of course, we could all point to times when we wish that person kind of tightened it up a little bit, but we did a lot of work. We did
40 articles.
Keep doing the work. Who knows, maybe we'll have a town meeting. I'm hearing rumors of a super, super special town meeting in September. We'll do like a couple of quick articles. Who knows?
Oh my
Um,
God, I haven't heard those rumors. I'm gonna have nightmares
yeah, well,
tonight.
give it time. Now that it's on TV, it's gonna come true.
God, please no.
Madam Moderator, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us on Brookline Interactive Group. I know you're looking to take a Zoom vacation for a little while, so thanks for giving us this 25 minutes, and delighted to have you. And once
Likewise.
again, congratulations on running an excellent and incredibly successful town meeting.
Thank you. You are very kind. And it's been a blast being here. So thank you very much.